Have you experienced the awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system? Obviously.
Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. A new low price and free games.
Mind-blowing graphics of Panasonic Real 3DO.
3DO.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about all things 3DO, the console, the company, and everything in between. I am Bill, and today I am flying solo. Thrak is unfortunately unable to make it due to illness, but he gave me the okay to do a solo episode for this week, so I've decided I'm going to try something a little different this time around. We're actually going to be hearkening back to the old days of the podcast, episode 1 in particular, where it was just me talking to myself. Always fun, always fun. But for this episode, I'm going to go kind of off format compared to the more recent episodes. I'm going to try something a little bit different just to get something out for all you guys. So for this episode, I thought it would be interesting. We had a few games that we had planned to cover. We're going to hold those off for now because I'd rather do those under the normal format. And instead, I decided it would be kind of interesting to... I wanted to talk a bit about the Army Men series. We've talked about the Army Men series in the past. We've done a retrospective of the series itself. We've also talked about a few of the games, particularly RTS and Sarge's War. I thought it'd be interesting if I did a personal ranking of these games. And my idea here is, because I've played all these games, I mean, I'm a crazy 3DO nut, well, always kind of have been. I've played most of these over the years. I wanted to do a bit of a personal ranking from my perspective. And then maybe sometime down the line, after we've played all of the games for the show, we could have Thrak do his own ranking personally. I'll run that by him later. But for now, I'll say... Where do I want to begin? So obviously, I think I'll start from the worst and then go to what I consider the best in the series. The Army Men series is for those first-time listeners here, the Army Men series is a weird one. It is so after 3DO went bankrupt and they stopped. Well, not bankrupt. After 3DO had stopped being a console manufacturer and had shifted over to be strictly a third-party publisher and developer, sort of similar to what Sega ended up doing. They Army Men was their main series that they had really created that was kind of their big success. And because it was their only major real success, they had a few other minor ones like Battle Tanks and the Might and Magic series, which they had acquired from New Age Computing. Army Men was really their baby. Like this, it was their main creation that they had put their heart and soul into. And unfortunately, because it was their only real major success, they kind of didn't know what else to do, so they basically oversaturated the market with Army Men games, and they progressively had a tendency to get worse and worse over the years because they were just pumping these things out with little regard. They released like 7 of them in 1 year. Like in a span from like 99 to 2003, there was at least 19. For this list, I'm going to be covering 21 games in particular, but there was like at least like 15 to like 18 games that were pumped out in this like couple of year period. So I'm going to count also the games that were after 3DO went bankrupt. There was a few games created by Global Star during their brief tenure with the series. So starting from worst and going on to first, I want to first talk about Army Men Soldiers of Misfortune. This is the final major game in the series. The series kind of, after 3DO lost it went to Global Star for a while, and then it kind of jumped around. There was a mobile studio that made a game. There was a couple things like that. None of them really did well at all, but the final major game, like console release, was Soldiers of Misfortune, and this game released for the Wii, PS2, and DS. This is like Army Men in name only. This game, the art style is completely different. The gameplay is not even close. It's all just kind of a mess. It was published by a company called Zoo Games, which I'm assuming they were the company that just had the series at the time, probably acquired it from Global Star, and developed by Big Blue Bubble. This game is just it's like a third person kind of thing. It's very short, but it's like very cartoony. It's more cartoony than the actual series was, and it's just the levels are just kind of a mess. Like the controls are awful. Everything about this game is just not worth playing. Like it by far the worst entry in the series, and the one I'd rank last. Following that, we get Major Malfunction. This was the final game created by Global Star during their run with the series. It was also the only one they created completely from scratch on their own. Developed by Team 17, of all things, through the Worm Studio. This game was like trying to be kind of new and unique, like cool third-person style. Completely unrelated from the previous games. Like the art style was different. Like it looks like Samus Aran's on the cover in like a blue Master Chief. It's really bizarre. This game, unfortunately, is just not very good. The story is bizarre. It controls pretty bad. The graphics are, well, I saw the interesting art style they were going for. It doesn't look great, and not only does it control bad, but like the computer in-game characters are just awful. It is not a fun game at all, and it is by far. You could tell that as much as 3DO had kind of given up by the end, they still knew what they were doing for the most part with this series. This game is just, ugh. Yeah. But yeah. After that, then we're going to get into probably the earliest game on this half of the list, Army Men Toys in Space. Toys in Space is an interesting one. This was the third game in the series, kind of. Sort of. Actually, no, technically not even. It was actually the fifth game in the series. Toys in Space was the final game of like what I consider like the original Army Men trilogy, which followed the first two games on PC. It was released for the PC in '99, and it's a first-person shooter real-time tactics game, very similar to the first two games. It just wasn't as good as the other ones. It honestly just kind of felt very half-assed and forced compared to the previous two games, and the story is like involves like toys in space. Just not a fun game. Not a fun game at all. It missed that refined charm that its predecessor, Army Men 2, had, and this one felt very phoned in, which is why I put it so low on the list. And then after that, we get Army Men Advance. Army Men Advance was the first entry on the Game Boy Advance. It's also like the weirdest like Army Men game. So it's a top-down shooter. It's like the only game in the series that does this. It's very arcadey. My only real issue with Army Men Advances, it's just kind of dull. It's not bad per se gameplay wise. Like it plays perfectly fine. Like it's structured fine enough. The graphics are whatever for Game Boy Advance. They're pretty mediocre for Game Boy Advance, but that's besides the point. It's just one of those games that kind of like you play it for like 5 minutes and you've kind of gotten the whole experience. It just really loses a lot of its luster. And I've played it a few times here and there. It's not very great. It was made by DC Studios, who are the only other game I can think of that they made State of Emergency 2, the less good sequel to that game. Yeah, and a bunch of license crap. They made the Rayman DS port too. That's interesting. Yeah, this game was not great. Not great at all. The later advanced games we'll see on the list were much better overall. But then following that, we get another very interesting entry in the series. We get Army Men Green Rogue, released in one of the many Army Men games released in 2001 for the PS2 and original PlayStation. This game completely just this game was one of like the perfect examples of like the Army Men series just like their method of like taking whatever they could think of, throwing it at the wall, and seeing what stuck. Moving away from like the third person action adventure, the flight combat, or the more strategic third person gameplay that the previous games had been utilizing. This game's just a straight up shoot 'em up, and it's a very very bare bones shoot 'em up. Not a ton is really significant in this game. Like it's technically it's part of the Sarge's Heroes storyline, but it's very. A lot of people have considered it very similar to like games like Commando or Akari Warriors. It's just not great. You just kind of you run. The screen constantly is scrolling forward, and you're running around shooting stuff. It's very. You play it, it exists, and once you're done, you move on. It doesn't. It also doesn't have the charm that the previous entries had. So that's kind of why I just. This is like one of the last ones that I have no real significant feelings towards. And then following this one is the most fascinating game in the series. It's only low because it's just. I don't think it's any better than any of the games after it on the list, but it's like. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the previous games. It is Portal Runner, the spin-off starring Vicky Grimm, a longtime like side character in the Sarge's Heroes series. Portal Runner is bizarre. It's like an action adventure, almost platformer. You play as Vicky going through like different time periods and stuff, and in a game it's not great, but it is interesting in the sense that it feels like they tried something. It's very hard to recommend it because it is inherently just not an amazing game, but it has a charm to it that a lot of the series had that kind of makes me like it. Unfortunately, it is also just a very mediocre kind of rough game. It honestly, it almost doesn't feel like an Army Men game at times. It is the most unique game. Unfortunately, it wasn't amazing. Hell, like Trip Hawkins had famously like gone on like rants about this game's getting very poor reviews and stuff, like just like threatening review sites, like crazy shit. And this was really kind of like the beginning of the end, I'd say, for 3DO as a developer. The story was fascinating though. This was still part of the goofy Sarge's Heroes line of games, so I like it, but I can't say it's a good game at all. Next up, this might be controversial to some people, but after we played it for the show, I've grown a bit of an appreciation for it. The next game we got is Sarge's War. Sarge's War it's a very fascinating game in all rights. It was the final game 3DO worked on before they had went bankrupt. It was unfinished at the time Global Star had taken it over, but it still is technically in line with the previous Sarge's Heroes series. It's technically the conclusion, although some people would argue RTS is the true conclusion. It plays very similar to the Sarge's Heroes games. A little more refined in certain places, but also highly unrefined in others. It's also notably very dark. Like a lot of the longtime characters that a lot of people like came to love from the series get killed off. They changed a lot of things that made it very un-Army Men-like. Like there's weapons are now metallic rather than plastic, like just a lot more violent. It's really the dark nature of the story that kind of throws a lot of people off with it. But after playing it, I don't think it's actually that bad. If anything, it's more just it feels rushed and mediocre. But I'd still say it's worth giving a shot if you are a fan of the Army Men series. Now, after this, the next 4 entries in the series, I'm going to lump together just because they are basically the same games, just with minor updates and differences. This is the Army Men World War series, which includes Army Men World War, Army Men World War Land, Sea, and Air, Army Men World War Final Front, and Army Man World War Team Assault. These 4 games are essentially a successor to Army Men 3D, where rather than going into the more jokey, lighthearted direction as the Sarge's Heroes games, this one kind of stays more in that somewhat realistic, for Army Men standards, gameplay, where it's more based around the strategy and the third person shooting gameplay, and it's more a down to earth kind of realistic style shooter. These games, like, they have tactical aspects and, like, they're more refined. My only real thing is my feelings towards these games are, I wish they had combined their efforts of 4 games into one very solid game, because I feel like there are aspects in these 4 games that are all really good. Like, each one kind of changes up the thing. Like, obviously, like, land, sea, air adds in new elements, particularly with the different gameplay aspects. But it's all so minor that I feel like the little tweaks between each one, if they had just put all that into one major, like, game, like one, like, they'd put, like, maybe a couple years into one true successor to Army Men 3D, I feel like it would have been a really good game. And I think that's my real disappointment with these games, because they're not bad. Particularly the first one is solid. It's not amazing. It's very much half baked in a lot of ways, but yeah, the Army Men World War games are. I give them a. I look at them more fondly. I just wish they weren't so stretched thin, because you can tell they were really just milking these things out at this point. Now, following this, I'd like to talk about the Sarge's Heroes games, Sarge's Heroes 1 and 2, both of which are very similar, so I'm going to kind of lump them together. Sarge's Heroes 2, I think, is the better of the two, but Sarge's Heroes 1, I think, had the more interesting story. This is where, like, the series kind of had spun off into its more storyline, like, narrative-focused section, following the titular Sarge, and then, like, the entire group of characters who you end up growing on. They end up growing on you a lot, and, like, even, like, for, like, the worst games, like, you do at least find these guys kind of endearing. Sarge's Heroes is an interesting one. The first game I find to be very unplayable on PlayStation and N64. Like, it's very rough. The Dreamcast version, though, which is based off the N64 version, but with much more smooth everything, basically, is actually pretty solid. It's not an amazing game by any means. It's a very rough action-adventure third-person shooter. But the story is so charming. The gameplay is very fine for what it is. Great single player. Some fun multiplayer for what it is. It's got, like, a Toy Story vibe to it. They're fun enough, like, passable in a lot of ways. Like, I'd highly recommend trying out the Dreamcast version. Sarge's Heroes 2 fixes a lot of the issues. I don't think it takes advantage of the PS2 as much as it could, but they are still very fun third-person shooters. If you want something simple, that's not, like, you're not going to get, like, high art with Army Men Sarge's Heroes, but you're going to get something fun enough. After that, though, then we get the 2 other Game Boy Advance games. So following Advance, they actually changed things up significantly with the further 2 Army Men Advance titles. There was Army Men Operation Green and Army Men Turf Wars. Turf Wars, I believe, was actually, like, the final Army Men game officially released under 3DO as a publisher. Because I believe it came out either around or shortly after Army Men RTS. But yeah, Operation Green and Turf Wars are actually isometric shooters. They're kind of almost a throwback to the first 2 Army Men games, only with the they kind of lower the tactical elements in favor of just more of a run and gun kind of shooter style. But it has a feel to it, which, well, not amazing. I think these games definitely tried a lot of new things that I feel like really. It was a niche that I feel like this series really kind of missed a lot. Like, just fun, action fun, not trying to be more than it is, but also staying true to the series roots. Operation Green is probably the better of the 2, although Turf Wars was also a very fun game, even if Turf Wars is a bit more on the obscure side. But I lumped those two together because then following those two, we get the original Army Men. The original Army Men is a very interesting game looking back on it. So it originally came out in 98, developed strictly by 3DO. It is a real-time tactics game. And actually, it was at one point even in development for the Panasonic M2, which is... We'll have to cover that thing on the show at some point. But yeah, the original Army Men, very interesting real-time tactics game. It plays a lot into the Army Men thing, but it also is the most... arguably the most, like, realistic. Like, it tends to... It doesn't play into the toy soldier aspect as much as the later games would. But it has... The reason I have this one lower on the list is because this game is very much... The bones are there for what would become a very interesting series. The problem with this game is it just kind of... It feels like it could be so much more. Like, if this was the only Army Men game, I think I'd look at it higher. Well, I'd obviously look at it higher, but if it was, like, maybe just this one, and then maybe, like... If it was just the, like, this, 2, and Toys in Space, I'd probably look at this game a lot higher. It's just, it's what the later games did that kind of puts this one down a bit. But following that, we get Army Men 3D. Now, Army Men 3D, in a lot of ways, is, like, the most well-known Army Men game. Like, next to maybe Sarge's Heroes, like, a lot of people played Army Men 3D back in the day on the original PlayStation. I believe it was also on PC. No, it was just on PlayStation. So Army Men 3D was essentially a remake of the original Army Men, believe it or not. Very loose remake. Like, it's not... It's definitely not like note for note, just a 3D remake. It is very more the idea is very similar. Like, it's a very serious game, like, plot-wise. The story is not super in-depth. It's more in the background. This game, if you play this game and then play World War, you'll see where World War took its direction from. Very simple, a bunch of levels with a goal. Get a whole bunch of different weapons, objectives. Capture the flag is a big aspect of it. Like, the multiplayer was super fun back in the day. Me and my sister Alex used to play this game a ton back in the day. Very simple. Graphics are fine for the time, and it controls fairly well. Nowadays, it's probably not aged the best, but I'd still say Army Men 3D. It's worth a play. It's one of the few that I would say is worth looking back at. Has it aged the best? Not really, but most of these games haven't aged particularly well. Now, following Army Men 3D, we get Army Men 2. Army Men 2, compared to 1, very similar gameplay, but overall, like, in most aspects, this game just improves on pretty much everything the first game did, and actually started to play a bit more into the toy soldier gimmick. Like, a lot of the stages were, like, featured, like, classic staples, like, in the kit, like, inside the, like, a home kitchen, like, bedrooms, like toy rooms, all sorts of fun stuff like that. Very charming game. Controls are much more fluid. Like, strategy is a lot easier to pull off. Just a fun improvement overall. The game was also loosely ported to the Game Boy Color, similar to the first game in the series. And yeah, just a fun little real-time tactics game. You can actually find the first two and Toys in Space on Steam nowadays for very cheap. So that's a good option to try these. Now, following Army Men 2, we get another game we had talked about on the show. We get Army Men RTS. Army Men RTS is a very, very interesting game in the series. It was another game that kind of, like, harkened back to the classic series games, although this one basically took the real-time strategy and went with a more modern take on it. Basically really went for the idea behind RTS was like making a fun RTS game that could be played on consoles with no problem. And Army Men RTS kind of like really like hits that off. Like it's easy to play, like easy to pick up. It's not the deepest RTS ever. But for what it does, it has a structure that is solid. And because of that, I feel like it is worth your time. It's also one of the first games created by Pandemic Studios, the studio behind Destroy All Humans and Star Wars Battlefront, a whole bunch of games they would later do. Fun stuff. One of the last games under 3DO themselves. Worth picking up. It's also one of the few Army Men games that has a somewhat decent reception. Now, the last two I want to talk about on this ranking are the Army Men Air Attack games. These games, Air Attack 2 to a lesser degree, but definitely Air Attack 1, these are by far the best Army Men games in the series. Like, bar none. Like, even reception-wise, these games were very well received, like, for Army Men standards. I mean, I guarantee you nowadays they're definitely looked at fonder. The Air Attack games are part of the Sarge's Heroes series. Like, they follow that same storyline, like, same characters, but they instead focus on air combat and missions, where you can... Mostly helicopter gameplay, where you control a helicopter pilot, and you have different objectives with each stage. Fun objectives, cool levels. The stages are very much based around, like, that Army Men charm. Like, they take place in, like, backyards, inside houses, like, real world areas. Like, you collect, like, batteries and stuff off the ground. All sorts of fun stuff. They're just, like... When I think Army Men, and I think, like, the things that make this series memorable, Air Attack is what I will immediately think of. Like, I will still pick up Air Attack 1 and give it a run through every now and then, just because it's a fun game. It is super solid, super entertaining, fun, charming. A definite recommendation for anybody. I cannot wait till we get around to playing those games in the future. But yeah, Army. That's my ranking. I guess I'll do a quick rundown again. So, from worst to best, we got Army Men, Soldiers of Misfortune, Major Malfunction, Toys in Space, Advance, Green Rogue, Portal Runner, Sarge's War, Team Assault, Land, Sea, Air, Final Front, World War. You could really mix those all together. Sarge's Heroes 2, Operation Green, Turf Wars, Original Army Men 3D, Army Men 2, RTS, Air Attack 2, and then Air Attack. I'll probably post online my full ranking, but yeah, that's basically my thoughts on the series overall. I'm sure as we replay them for the show, I might change my list up as we go along. I might find something in some of the games we haven't touched yet that truly... Maybe I was missing something when I played them years ago. But yeah, that's the Army Men games. I've rambled on enough. This is going to be a much shorter podcast. It's mostly just to keep the show going, trying to do... This is why I have a co-host, because I struggle at keeping these things going by myself. But yeah, so anyways, guys, thank you for listening to me ramble for half an hour talking about the Army Men games. You can find the 3DO Experience on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify, and be sure to check us out over on the Superpod Network. That is superpodnetwork.com. Awesome site where you can find all sorts of videos, blogs, podcasts, a whole bunch of awesome creators over there. Next week, we should hopefully be covering Who Shot Johnny Rock. I believe Casey has confirmed he will be joining us for that one. Hopefully Thrak is feeling better. Yeah, this is just a one-off, guys. We're going to hopefully keep the show going at the normal way in the future. This was a very last-minute thing I tried to throw together, so if it's kind of crappy, I'm sorry. I tried. But anyways, guys, once again, thank you for joining us, and I will see you all later.
If you're not playing on a 3DO system, what are you playing with?